for this spring, but I'll start again. Welcome everyone. This is our third engagement webinar for this spring semester. Today we are going to focus on something very important for all of us. It is job interview skills, and we have three wonderful panelists with us. As a reminder, this webinar is recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube later on. So my name is Lynda Lee. I'm the Dean of Graduate Programs at Baker College. I have been with Baker since 2008. I will serve as one of the two moderators for this webinar today, and Dr. Ashley Roeder will serve as another moderator. Ashley, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Dr. Ashley Roeder. I'm the Associate Dean for the College of Business here, and I've been with the college since 2022. And as Dr. Lee said, I will serve as one of the other moderators. I will be watching the chat just to make sure if you have any questions before the end of the presentations or any comments, I can ask the panel for you.
Thank you, Ashley. And now I would like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. I'll go by this order. Lynda, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lynda Cooney. I'm the founder and president of JCMcC LLC, which is a talent consulting and recruiting organization. So fundamentally, what I do is I work with leadership primarily in the energy industry to determine who they need on their team. And then as part of that, I recruit folks and prep them for interviews, both from the people who are interviewing and from the side of the interview panel or person internal to the company.
Thank you very much, Lynda. Yvonne.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yvonne Rencher, and I'm the Senior Director of Strategic Partners and Continuing Education with Baker College. And what that means is that I am responsible for overseeing our career services operations as well as alumni relations and continuing education. So I work with all of you in terms of everything you need to be career ready. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I am excited about our webinar.
Thank you, Yvonne. And Stacey.
Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Stacey Bonet. I am a three-time Baker College graduate, and I am also adjunct faculty here in the College of Business.
Thank you, Stacey. I want to thank our wonderful panelists for taking out this 1 hour from their very busy schedule and come to talk with us. I'm sure everybody will learn something new today, so let's continue. This is our outline of today's webinar. We will talk about how to prepare for an interview and how to answer questions effectively within interview process, what questions you may ask the interviewers, and what kind of follow-up actions that you can take after interviews. Yvonne will also share some very important career services resources with us, and you will get the opportunity to ask the panelists any question related with job interviews. So feel free to type your questions in chat and Ashley will monitor those. In the end, we will have a super short survey so that you can tell us how well we did and we can make improvement based on that. And if you choose to leave your contact information in the short survey, you can get Baker College water bottle and a Baker sticker that you can put on your water bottle or your laptop or anywhere else. Okay, so before we ask our panelists questions, let's ask you a question. Could you please share your biggest worry when you prepare for interviews? If you choose other, feel free to type your worry in chat. All right, I feel like we almost got everybody's feedback. Now everybody can see the results. So the biggest worry within this audience is knowing how to answer interview questions, or talking about your experience and skills clearly. We also have people worry about how to make a good first impression. Actually, that is a very good question. And also about asking the right questions. Do we have any input in chat about this?
I don't think anything in chat just yet.
Just others. Okay, so let's continue and see what we can learn. First of all, I would like to ask our panelists, what steps can we take to prepare well for an interview? And I would like to invite Stacey to start from a psychological academic perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. So there are two key parts of your brain that are at work when you're in an interview, and they're also sometimes at war. So the first part is your amygdala. That's your brain's fear center. It's responsible for your fight or flight response. And when it kicks in, it can hijack your thinking. It can make it hard to recall information in that moment. Then there's also the prefrontal cortex, and that's your rational, thoughtful brain, the part that lets you think clearly and pull up the right memories when you need them. So during an interview, these two regions can work against each other. And at the same time, your brain is releasing hormones. So stress from the interview is going to trigger cortisol and adrenaline, which is going to raise your heart rate and can cause brain freeze. But they can also sharpen your focus if you're well prepared. So when things are going well, your brain may release dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, which will fuel your motivation and help you feel genuinely connected to your interviewer. The good news is that all of these responses are influenced by one thing. That's how prepared you feel when you walk in the door to your interview. Preparation is what keeps the prefrontal cortex in charge and turns the stress hormones into an asset rather than a liability.
So the key point is that it is common to feel nervous before an interview, but if you practice and practice and practice, you will feel better and you will perform better in the interview, right? So
exactly.
Okay, good. Now I would like to invite Lynda to give us practical
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So your preparation for your interview should start from the moment that it's being scheduled. Whoever you're scheduling with should be able to supply you with some information that you will need in order to prep more. So ask what to expect. Who's going to be interviewing you? How do they fit on the team? How many people will there be? What's the format? Is it going to be a panel interview? Is it going to be one-on-one? And who's ultimately making the decision? Make sure that you know who's actually hiring you, because then you can more properly place yourself during your interview to perhaps pay more attention to that person or make sure that you're answering their questions very thoroughly. And then it comes to your prepping for the interview. Look up the company. Make sure you know what they do. Please don't go into an interview and not understanding what it is that they do, how they fit into the marketplace, and how this job supports what they do. It might be very obvious if you are I saw someone was in education. If you're a teacher, it's very obvious, but in the corporate world, it might not be obvious. Maybe you need to ask that. Okay, so how does this job support this type of project that you do within this industry? But at least that shows that you've done your homework. Really read the job posting, not just browse it, but notice what's emphasized and be ready to discuss it. Practice some of those common interview questions and have answers ready for tell me about a time when types of questions that you know are going to come up. If it is an on-site interview, you want to Google Map it. You want to see how long it's going to take you to get there. Will it take longer if you're driving during rush hour? Do you need to drive by to find out where to go in? I once worked at a building that was over a mile long, and we would tell people, you need to come to lobby A, and we would still have people get there and call, and I don't know where to go because they just put it into Google Maps and thought it was going to be fine. It's not fine. And we tried to tell you it wasn't fine. And you not only didn't pay attention, you didn't bother to figure out why we were giving you additional information before you got here, and it's never a good look, and it causes people to be late. Which leads me to make sure that you're going to get there on time and maybe a couple minutes early. If it's a video interview, which is more and more common now, find a good spot. Make sure you don't have a window behind you that causes glare. Don't wear really busy patterns that can be distracting. If you don't have a spot, close a door. Sit in front of a closed door. That's fine. No one's looking for perfect. They're looking to have a conversation with you and not be distracted. That being said, there may be things that happen that you don't have control over. I one time was interviewing someone and his cat jumped up onto his lap, and you could tell all the blood drained from his face. This poor guy. He was so worried. And I said, "Oh, hi, what's your cat's name?" And I happened to have a cat right on my floor at that time. And I said, "This is Leo." If things go wrong, and they might, roll with it. We are all human. If you are interviewing from home, they know that, but be prepared for some of those things. What are you going to do if, your dog starts barking or a child walks in or whatever it is? Kind of have that contingency plan ready just in case. So in the moment, you're not a deer in headlights. Figure out what you're going to wear. Don't wake up that morning and go, "Oh my gosh, nothing fits. Oh, I thought I had that, but it's stained." Grab your clothing, make sure it's ready, iron it if you need to. Make sure that it's done ahead of time. If you need to make a, midnight run to Meijer, that's better than waking up and not having anything at all. And finally, show up a few minutes early, but a few minutes, right? Don't show up half an hour early. Show up 5 to 10 minutes early to be respectful. And that goes for whether it's a video interview or a on-site interview. Show up a couple minutes early. Yeah.
Those are wonderful advice, Lynda. Thank you so much. And because we are having more and more virtual interviews like this, I would also add my piece of information to try to make sure that the camera is at your eye level. I have seen cameras looking up from people's chin, or people are too far away from the camera. So basically, you can do a test of your technology and make sure that you look normal in the camera.
And don't stand up. The view changes if you stand up, right? So if you're sitting down and that's where you have it positioned, don't move.
Right. Now, I would like to invite Yvonne to add more advice.
All right. Thank you. I think one of the biggest things that we cannot stress enough is to practice, practice, practice. And I know that sounds basic. And the reason why I say it is because we do mock interviews in career services. And I can normally tell when a student has practiced and when a student has not. So that's one of the things you want to make sure. And now you have opportunity. You can do mock interviews. You can also, bounce questions off of your friends or your family and things like that. You definitely, the more and more you practice, I will tell you, the more comfortable you're going to be. The other piece is knowing your why and what that means. So there's two things that I want you to think about. Why do I want to work for this organization? That means researching the company, knowing what it is about that company that stands out. Why this company? So doing your due diligence. Just as they're interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. So think about it that way. So you want to do your homework so you're prepared to answer questions, but you also want to do your homework to make sure that this is the company for you, or to have an idea. The other piece is, why did you choose this field of study? I ask that question when I do mock interviews. Why did you choose to be a nurse? Why did you choose to be a business analyst? Why did you choose to go into accounting or human resources or management or whatever it may be? You need to know your why, because that's going to help you to share your story. That's going to help you to bring across your question, or the answers to your questions. They'll be more genuine. So really, really dig down and think about, why did I choose to go into this profession? And then also think about some of the things that you do from a volunteer perspective that you can add and bring to the table as you're answering your questions. The other piece, one of the questions that we wanted to share as part of this webinar is, how can students prepare if they don't have a lot of work experience? So as I just mentioned, volunteer what you're doing in the classroom. So you're doing discussions with other individuals, you're doing group projects. You may do volunteer as part of your course requirement. So if those are things that you're doing, that's how you're going to relate that experience to say, no, you may not have hands on, but you can definitely bring to light all the things that you are doing from your classroom and volunteer perspective. And then lastly, I will say about using AI. We are encouraging students to use AI, but it cannot be your end all be all, and you need to make sure that you are checking behind AI. And what I mean for that is you can practice with mock interviews, you can do chat-based mock interviews, and I will show you that at the end. You can also use it to help you build out some of your materials that you'll need, such as your resume, your cover letter. And so those are things where you can use those tools, and we can definitely work with you to support that. But make sure when you're using AI that you fact check and that it's information that you have and not information that AI may be giving you that sounds good. So make sure it's something you've actually done, completed, and that you can talk to that.
Thank you, Yvonne. Now, let me ask the panelists the second question. So during the interviews, how can you answer their questions so well that you stand out of the other candidates and be picked by them? I still want to invite Stacey to go by the academic perspective first.
Thank you. So both your brain and your interviewer's brain are constantly scanning for authenticity, and both will react when something feels off. So when you're not being fully honest or authentic, your own brain triggers subtle physical responses that you may not even notice. A slight increase in your heart rate, small involuntary movements in your face or hands. These aren't conscious choices. They're your brain and body betraying the gap between what you're saying and what you actually think or feel. So meanwhile, your interviewer's brain is wired to detect exactly the same kinds of shifts. The brain is a pattern recognition machine. And when your behavior or physiology changes unexpectedly, it registers those changes as a signal of inauthenticity, discomfort, or dishonesty. So here's the catch though. Nerves can trigger the exact same physical response as inauthenticity. An elevated heart rate, a shaky hand, a flickering expression, your interviewer's brain can't automatically tell the difference between someone who's hiding something and someone who's just anxious. So if you're feeling genuinely nervous, consider just saying so. A simple acknowledgement of, I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous today, gives your interviewer the context they need to interpret your signals correctly. And more often than not, it actually puts both of you more at ease. The takeaway of this is simple. You can't easily fool a brain that's built to notice. The most effective strategy isn't to manage your tells, it's to walk in genuinely prepared and genuinely yourself, so there's nothing to hide in the first place.
Thank you, Stacey. Lynda?
Yeah, so my advice is to start with coming up with your own examples. Step back from what you know you're walking into and think about the several things that you want to make sure when you leave this interview, those people know about you or your experience or your schooling, whatever it is. Figure out which stories will be most valuable for this role specifically. Utilize the job description, figure out what you want to highlight, and write them down. Figure out what it is you have accomplished. And if you have numbers, write those down. Again, going back to what Stacey was just saying about your brain, you're going to forget in the moment. You think you know you increased efficiency by 72%, but you're going to sit there and go, gosh, what was it that I wanted to say? Write them down. It's okay to bring notes with you. It's okay to refer to notes. We don't ever want to simply read off the notes because you'll sound like you're reading, which makes you sound inauthentic. But make sure that you have your examples, excuse me, written down. Another thing is to watch your verbal patterns. Watch the ums and uhs. It's okay to pause. It's okay to ask for clarification. It's even okay to answer the question and then say, did I answer exactly what you were hoping to get at? and ask if what it is that you said fully answers what it was that they were hoping for. It's less promising, I guess. It's less of putting on a good first impression to go, yeah, what was that? Right? You want to sound confident in your own experience. And then be prepared to answer some of those common questions. Think of the typical interview questions. Tell me about a time when. What stories do you have? Tell me about a time when something difficult came up or you had to present difficult information to someone in leadership and what happened. Tell me about a time when you had to work with someone who didn't want to accomplish the task the same way you did. What did you do? What was the outcome? Have them ready, including some of those questions that I think are kind of trap questions. In my experience, I think we've pretty much moved away from, if you had to be a plant, would you choose to be a daisy or a rose? The real tricky, why are you even asking me these questions? But they are going to ask you, what are your weaknesses? Have a good answer for that. Make sure that you really think about those things before you're sitting in that hot seat.
Yes, if you were asked what is your weakness, and then you may think of something that you are working on, or you have been overcoming that weakness, right? And
Absolutely.
that shows that you identify your strength and weakness, but you're also committed to improve yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I would also like to share that the interview process is a conversation. You think sometimes it's helpful to think from the interviewer's perspective. They ask you a question because they want to know you from certain perspective. They want to see if you are the best fit for the position. So if you hear a question that you are not very clear, you can ask them, do you mean this, or can you elaborate on your question so you truly understand the intention of the question, so that you can give that interviewer the information that they need to understand you.
Mm-hmm.
Yvonne, would you like
Yep.
to?
And I saw the question in the chat, if I can answer that about the weakness question. Or do you want to wait till the end? I was just going to answer
Go ahead.
quick. Okay. Okay. So one of the things, of course, and I was going to make a joke of this, but you don't want to say I'm late all the time. So of course, that's not you may be late, and that's something you want to definitely work on. But you don't want to answer it in that way. It's going to be more things like, I know for me, I overthink things. So what I do is, if I was to answer that question and I said, one of the things that I know I struggle with is overthinking. So I may think for you or think I know the answer. So one of the things that I'm working on is that when someone gives me a task, then I take the time to ask specific questions. So I get at what it is that they want me to do. So I'm not doing more than what they want or less than what they want. Because a lot of times my brain starts going when someone tells me to do certain things. And I'm saying, okay, did they mean this? Did they mean it this way? Well, the best thing for me to do is to make sure I'm asking the right questions. So you may walk away, you take that task, you write your questions out, and then you go back. And so that's what I would explain in an interview, to say that's something that I'm working on and it's helped me to do A, B, and C. So that's how I would answer that question. If you were to ask me what my weakness is, that's one of my weaknesses. And so again, hopefully that was helpful in answering that. But
Yvonne, can I jump in really quick and give
sure.
another example? You mentioned, don't just say, oh, I'm always late. If you are always late, maybe your answer is something along the lines of, I get so focused that I just am off in my own la la land working on a project and I lose track of time. And so in order to combat that, what I've learned is I have to set alarms 10 minutes before I need to stop something. So show what it is, even if it's something that you're not unlearning, because you're not going to change who you are. It's not an academic thing that you can progress on. You can set yourself up to be successful by doing X, Y, or Z. Show those things. We're all human. That's okay.
All right. So as I show you this, you all can read what each task, and I know probably majority of you have heard about the STAR method. It is a commonly it's almost like for your when you think of behavioral based questions, really that's what it targets. So they want you to explain the situation that you have, whatever the task was that it involved, what actions you took and results. I will tell you this, when you think about the STAR method, what I call it is really telling the story. When you speak, as Dr. Lee said, when you speak as a conversation, it's really you sharing your story. So when they ask you certain questions, you will say ABC, but then you're going to back that up, giving them an example. One of the things I see in mock interviews all the time is people will answer the question, why did you choose your field of study? And you say, I enjoy working with numbers. Say you're an accounting student. I enjoy working with numbers. And you leave it there. So at that point, you want to give examples of you showing that I enjoy working with numbers. You could say, most people hate to do their tax return. I love to do a tax return. And one of the things I research it, I do this, I read all of the articles, and I even help of my friends and family to do their tax return. And that may not be the greatest example, but I'm just saying you want to show them through an example in telling that story, and that's how you get at the STAR method. And one of the things someone brought up earlier where they said, I was able to move up the needle in terms of in customer service by 20%. So when you give stats like that and you're able to talk about how you got to that 20% increase, those are the types of things that your employers who are interviewing you want to hear. What were the results? So you can't just tell them the scenario, and it may not be a percentage, but you want to tell them what occurred, what happened, because that's going to show what you're going to bring to the table and what you can do at that organization. So just make sure you're ready to tell your story. And I go back to the slide before. Practice, 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 and document those stories. Write down here, if they ask this question, I'm going to use this story. And write down and think about some stories that you've gone through and experiences that would bring to light what it is you have to offer. A lot of times students shortchange themselves, and I don't want you to shortchange yourself. You've done a lot. Make sure you bring that to the table.
Yeah, I would add that in order to predict or guess what questions could be asked, I will go back to what Lynda said. Read the job description very carefully, because that will give you a clue what this role or this position is about. And then you can see how your experience or how what you learned can be related to what they want. And from there, you can prepare several stories that you can tell. And as Yvonne said, it's very often for people to get excited about what they did, but forgot to mention what the result is. And that is the part that really matters, that can help you to stand out from the other candidates.
Absolutely.
Now, Yvonne, would you like to share more advice? You are muted.
I am muted. So I always say the scary question is tell me about yourself. And I know it's not business students, but we just did mock interviews for quite a few of our vet tech students. And it was funny because that was my first question. And a lot of time in some form or fashion, they're going to ask you that question. And what they're looking for is like your 30-second commercial. And everyone says, oh my God, I don't know what to share. Again, I go back to your story. So when I was working with our vet tech students, it was interesting because a lot of them had been working with animals all their lives. And so in that, I told them to share that. And it's funny, when they shared that, they were able to bring that excitement. You could see they just lit up. And so for an employer to see that, you want to think about, again, going back to what I said, your why. So you're able to say, I chose this field because, maybe your family was involved in that profession, or maybe again you love numbers, or maybe HR, you want to work with people, whatever it may be. tell your story. And a good way to tell your story and to tell them about you is to talk about your why as it relates to your profession and why you chose that particular profession. So don't make it a scary question. Just really think about your why and why you're there, why you're before them. And then handling difficult questions. One thing I will say is this. It is okay. Now, I'm not saying you say, I don't know to the entire interview, but there may be a question that they ask and you do not know the answer. That is okay for you to say, you know what, that's a great question. And I'm not 100% sure. But what I'm going to do is I will get back with you. I will right away, I will get your information and I will send that information. In most cases, you're going to be able to answer all of the questions. But if there was a situation where you could not, definitely tell them that you're going to follow up and do that right away, right after that interview. Do what you need to do to answer. But even with difficult questions, pause, think, because in most cases, you have that information if you've practiced. So just keep that in mind. Again, it goes back to you practicing, looking at that job description, knowing that organization, and being able to share your story. That's really what an interview is all about, is you being prepared.
Thank you, Yvonne. And these are wonderful tips for answering questions. Now let's move on to what questions you can ask the interviewers, because as Lynda and Yvonne and Stacey said, right, they are interviewing you and you are also interviewing the company. So when the interviewers ask you what questions do you have, what can you say? Stacey?
Thank you. So asking thoughtful questions about the organization or the role you're applying for sends a powerful signal, and your interviewer's brain will pick up on it immediately. Curiosity and genuine interest show up as engagement, and the brain reads engagement as motivation. It tells your interviewer that you're not just looking for any job, that you're specifically interested in this job. The flip side is equally true. If you ask no questions at all, your interviewer's pattern recognition brain will notice that absence. It can register as indifference, as lack of preparation, or as simply not caring enough to want to know more. Even if that's not how you necessarily feel, that silence at the end of an interview can leave the wrong impression. The questions you ask are one of the simplest ways to demonstrate that your interest is real. And an interviewer's brain is well equipped to tell the difference between someone who is genuinely curious and someone who's just going through the motions.
That's true. Now I would like to invite Lynda and Yvonne together to give some practical advice.
Sure. So when you're thinking about interview questions, some of them will come up during the interview, will come to mind, and absolutely make sure you get your questions answered. But before you get there, think about the company itself. What questions do you have about the company? About the role itself, what questions do you have about the role? What do you need to know to determine if it's going to be a good fit for you? What are you looking for from your next role that this absolutely must have in order for it to check your boxes? Is there something you really value, something that might be a deal breaker? Make sure you get to those answers by the end of your interview. What do you need to know about the role? And how can you ask to make sure that it's exactly what you think it is? Sometimes job descriptions are terrible, frankly. They're pulled out of a drawer, well, now an electronic file, and sometimes not edited at all. So make sure that the job is exactly what you think you're walking into. Or is there anything missing from the job description that you need to know? Who will you be working with? What does the team look like? Who would you report to? Sometimes those things might be on the job description, but often you're just going to need to ask. Determine for yourself what it is that you want to accomplish in this role. What is it that if you take this role, you will expect you will have gained experience in or done, and make sure that that is what the role is. You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Absolutely leave with all of your questions answered that you need to.
What I would add to that, again, and that's a good segue, one of the things is because you're interviewing them as well, this is your time when they open it up for questions for you to engage them. And one thing I always stress to students and graduates is this: you want to watch their body language, just as Dr. Bonet mentioned in terms of our brain. You want to watch how they're responding when you're asking certain questions. So, great questions to ask them where you can really watch that body language is, what do you enjoy most about working for this organization? Why did you choose to work for this organization? Watch their body language. If they pause or they fumble over how to answer, that's a sign right there. So again, if they're uncomfortable in the role or they don't have anything immediately to say about why, that's something that you can note. Now, that doesn't mean you won't take the opportunity, but again, watch their body language just as they're watching yours. So it's a two-way street there. Another question that's great is describe a typical day. So what is your typical day going to look like? And I get it, no day is typical, but starting out, what is my first 30 days? What are your expectations of me? So those are questions and things that you can think about, just again to get a response, making sure that everything that you're looking for, they're answering those questions. And then one thing is this: even if you get there and you realize this is not it, keep in mind that that's an opportunity for you to practice. So again, don't look at it as, oh my gosh, this isn't what I thought it was and I'm not interested. Or even if you don't get the opportunity, every opportunity is a chance for you to practice. You get better and you get better. So those are just a few tips. Again, it's a two-way street. So you're interviewing them too. Make sure you're asking the right questions.
Thank you, Yvonne. Now let's move on to after interview. Should we follow up with them? Should we send them a thank you note, or should we do anything else? Stacey.
Absolutely. So a follow after your interview is doing more work than you might think. And it's doing that work for your brain and your interviewers. For your interviewer, it serves as a memory prompt. Hiring decisions are rarely made in the moment. And by the time a decision is being discussed, your interviewer has likely met several candidates. A thoughtful follow-up brings you back to the front of their mind at exactly the right time, reinforcing the positive impression that you already made. For you, it's an opportunity on several fronts. It demonstrates conscientiousness and attention to detail qualities every employer values without you having to say a word about them. If anything came up during the interview that you wanted to clarify or expand on, this is your last chance to make sure you've said everything you wanted to say. And perhaps most importantly, following up gives you a sense of agency and a process that can otherwise feel completely out of your hands. Taking that one small action activates the part of your brain that feels in control, which can ease your post-interview anxiety. And a warm, genuine note can also continue to build the rapport you started building in the room, because that human connection doesn't have to end when the interview ends.
Thank you. Lynda and Yvonne.
Thank you. Send a thank you note. There is some differing opinions out there at this point about sending thank you notes. We're at the point that it's standard to send an email. You don't have to do a handwritten note. You don't have to figure out how to mail it to them. And by the time it gets there, they will have already expected to get an email. Send a thank you note. Ask for business cards for contact information. If it's a panel interview, oftentimes you'll have the email addresses on the invite. And if you don't, ask the person who coordinated it for you. Send a different thank you note to each person, unless you're doing one of those crazy interviews or it's 10 people, then maybe that's not appropriate. But generally speaking, send a thank you note. Each one should be a little bit different, again, assuming that there aren't 10 people, but each one should be a little bit different. And this is your opportunity to explicitly say you're interested if that's the case. It does not have to be a novel. Thank you so much for your time. I'm even more interested following our discussion because of X, Y, and Z. Let me know what's next. I look forward to next steps is absolutely appropriate, but make sure you send one.
Okay, thank you.
And just a real quick follow-up, Lynda, just a question that was in the chat. I was going to wait till
Mhm.
the end, but it applies really directly
Yeah.
here. About how long do you think you should wait
Ooh.
before sending it? Was the question immediately after the interview, or you wait a few hours? You know, there's so many things to think about. I think one of those is just what's the general time frame?
There are so many things to think about. And I'm going to say generally, if you send it immediately, that's maybe a little too fast because it will seem as though you already had it written. Wait at least an hour, but I think anytime between an hour and 24 hours is pretty standard.
And also, I would like to add that if you got a hard question that you couldn't answer during the interview, it is the time to provide the answer in your follow-up email.
Yeah. Oh, it's also time that if you get out of the interview and you go, ugh, that left me feeling sticky. I just don't know if I like them. Or this job is not at all what I thought it was, and I've had an opportunity to sit down and drink a glass of water and, you know, really think it over, and I'm just not that interested. Remove yourself from the process. It's okay to send a thank you email that says, thank you so much for your time. Upon further reflection, I'm really looking for a role that does more of this, which is what I thought this was. I'd like to remove myself from the process. Keep me in mind for future opportunities that are more in this field. That's appropriate and professional.
Good, very good. Now, I would like to invite Yvonne to share some career services resources at Baker College.
All right, thank you for that. And let me get to my screen here. So I am going to,
Stop
yes,
sharing. Okay.
yes. Can you see my screen? It should be handshake. Okay. So I am in our handshake tool. Hopefully, I'll ask this question in the chat. How many of you know handshake? I hope all of you. But what handshake is it's our tool that we use. It does quite a few things. So there are resources that are available, and it is also a job search tool. So again, we have employers who are interested in working with Baker College. And so what they do is they join our handshake network as employers, and they can post opportunities, whether full-time, part-time, internship, they have lots of different opportunities. So when you go to your profile, this is the view you will have. So I'm logged in as a student. So first, it's going to look at your profile and it's going to say, okay, what matches your profile? So you see here across the top, a lot of times I get ones that are more education focused because again, my profile, I work for a college. So again, it pulls different opportunities for me. So it's going to curate for you and it's going to look for opportunities that you can apply for. The other thing is suggested job searches. So you may want to look at full-time, part-time. You may want to look at a certain area so you can filter that way. Now, one of the things I do want to do a public service announcement or a commercial and share with you that we do have an upcoming virtual career fair. So you can do it from the comfort of your home, just as you're doing right now, and participate in our virtual career fair, which is going to be hosted on Thursday, April 23rd. And we are looking forward to having students and alumni to participate. You can even look at the employers that are registered, and then you would register through Handshake. I will also give my contact information where you can contact us if you wanted to work with us, because as career services, we do help you to prep for things such as a career fair. So we can help with mock interviews, cover letters, resumes, anything along those lines, or how do I prepare for a virtual career fair? So that is one of the things that we do as well. So I will give our contact information where you can put in a ticket to work with us. We also post all of our on-campus jobs. So if you are a student who does work study or has work study capability, you can also apply for one of those positions. But a couple of resources I want to show you here. So Baker College Collections. What we've done, if you click on collections, is we have basically pulled jobs for you based on your field of study. So you can look for ones that are great for business majors or internships and volunteering. Or again, if you're a veteran, veteran friendly employers. So great resource here for you to think about opportunities specific to your field of study. I think we had a health services administration student. So again, you could look for opportunities there as well. I will also click over here to Career Center. And you can see, so from this profile, it shows me, again, a different view, but it gives me the Baker College collections. It also gives me this resources tab. And so this is what I want to show you here. With the resource tab, there are lots of different tools. So we have the Gemini Career Guide. This helps you, it's an interactive tool that helps you to do mock interviews that are chat based. So you can type in, that you want to apply for a specific position. This is a tool, it has the access to that tool. Career Explorer is an assessment tool. So maybe you're thinking about what jobs are in HR. You don't want to just say, hey, I'm interested in HR. What's involved in HR? So you can use this assessment tool to give you an idea of the different types of opportunities within HR. Resume tips for veterans, tips for transition. A lot of these are veteran, but as you continue to scroll down, resume tips sheet, interviewing success presentation, handshake introduction. How do I get started on handshake? Work experience, all types of things. So lots of different resources, cover letters, making LinkedIn work for you. So everything you could think of, we have resources that you can access at your fingertips. If it's at 12 midnight, you can access these resources. So definitely get used to utilizing Handshake. It's your go-to for everything. And then also we will put in the chat our contact information if you wanted to work with someone one-on-one. So thank you for that. And hopefully you'll start using Handshake, to help supplement all that we're doing here in terms of our discussion today, but where you have additional resources that you can utilize as well. Thank you.
And I'll put that handshake link in the chat here too.
Perfect. And then our email address, if you wanted to put in a ticket, would be CRC, and I can put that in the chat as well at Baker. Yep, right there. Thank you.
Right. And we will share these slides and the recording after this evening's webinar. So probably tomorrow, so you will have all these links. Now it's time for questions for the panel. And also you can scan this one or click on this link in chat to finish that small survey.
Here, I'll put that link in chat for the survey too. I did keep a list of some of the questions that we had as we went through. So I think one of the first ones, you touched on this a little, Yvonne, but it was, how do you prepare as a candidate? How do you prepare when you as a candidate have more education than the person interviewing you, but your experience may be lacking?
That's a good question. Now, one of the things, I think as far as whether or not your experience outweighs their experience, you don't even need to think about that piece. The biggest thing is in terms of practicing and going back to that job description, because a lot of times when I'm working with students and I'm asking certain questions, there are things a lot of times that we forget. So maybe that volunteer experience that we have, or a project that we worked on within our job that we can also bring to the table. So we'll feel that we're lacking, but there are things within that job description we say, okay, no, I've never done that before. And then we start asking those specific questions to say, you know what, but I volunteered and I did A, B, and C where I had to manage this project. Or I was the lead in a project that I did in a classroom setting. So those are things that you really have to dig beyond just what you did in an actual job and really think about maybe management ability, communication skills, things like that are things that you can still bring to the forefront. So even if you don't have all of the skills that they're looking for, there are normally things that you can bring to the table to still highlight those skill sets that you have. I hope that answered that question.
Can I answer it completely differently? Because you're absolutely right, Yvonne, but I had a totally different thought come to mind. Um, I think the way to go about that is with a ton of humility. You never want to come to someone with the expectation that, yes, but I have more education than you. And that's maybe not the way you meant that question, but that's the way I read it, right? I'm interviewing with this person, but I'm more educated than they are. What on earth now? You want to come to them in a way that you know you have so much to learn. And so maybe you come to them with a question of, I understand that this is what we learn about. What's it really like? So come to it with an understanding of, we have very different experiences here. Tell me about yours. And no matter what, that will make that person feel valued, which will make your interview go better.
Lynda, may I jump in here?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So in my day job, I work for another professor at a different school. And when I interviewed with him, he asked me, "Why do you want this job? You clearly are too educated for it." And I said to him, "Because the work that you do in business management is very different than what I studied in business management. And I am interested in learning that side of business management and economics." So I have been in this job for several years now, and I love it. I think that being your authentic self, but also, yes, being humble is very important. And I definitely did not come into those interviews as if, well, I have a terminal degree. I came into these interviews as, this sounds like an interesting job. And I'm really very sincerely interested in learning more about what I do and about what they do.
Thank you. I appreciate all the panel's input. I think that was a great way, a really well-rounded way to answer, that question. And then we did have a question too. Is it poor form to ask about compensation, or is this a trick by some corporations to hide their intentions?
Does anyone mind if I jump in here? Ask about money. You're not working for free, right? We are in the day and age where there are many, many locations that it's actually illegal to not post the pay range. Michigan is not in that category, but you should know at least the range walking into your interview. You should be able to ask that of probably whoever's coordinating the interview. There are always exceptions. If the person's assistant is coordinating, they might not know, but the HR rep should. You shouldn't really have to walk into an interview without at least knowing a range. It might not be exactly what you are offered, but you should know, and it should be expected that you should be allowed to know that.
And the only thing I will add to that is don't make that your main question.
Yeah.
Because again, you want to be careful that it's again, yes, we are going to work. We're not working for free. But one of the things that I will share with students is you can do your homework and again, your research. A lot of times you can find out ranges for organizations. I've been able to dig to find out if you're grade 8 or if you're grade 1 or whatever it may be to see that specific range. You should be able to, do some homework to find out what that is. The biggest thing is, like Lynda said, they should be able to give you that information, but I may not ask that in my interview, but I would probably talk to someone maybe who I'm corresponding with to ask that question to make sure if you're wasting your time, because that's not going to be, feasible to you in terms of that opportunity. So that's just my little piece to it, but absolutely you should know what the salary is going to be.
Yeah, and maybe if you're coordinating with someone prior to it, you can just say, thank you so much. Yes, I'm interested. Can you tell me what the pay range is for this? And if they ask you, hey, how much do you need to make? They should never ask you how much you are making, by the way, although it's not illegal in Michigan yet, it's illegal a lot of places. Most people will not even ask you and shouldn't. Just ask, what's budgeted for this role? And that's not unprofessional. It's okay to ask.
Excellent. Thank you. We had somebody respond. Thank you for saying that. So many of the grind mindset mentalities make it seem like you should be working for free and happy about it. So they appreciated that. And we have a question from April. Are there tools to help you remember experiences to be able to answer the questions better with your examples of work experiences? So I think kind of like, are there tips to be able to, maybe remember and match experiences to make your answer the questions better?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about is making your notes. And it is okay to have your notes, and it's a trigger. So when I used to teach our professional career strategies course moons ago, because I've been with Baker for over 20 years. And so we used to teach a course out of career services. And so when I would teach, it was a 4 hour class. So I was talking and interacting quite a bit. But in order to remember or to have those triggers, we always, again, when we talk about Dr. Bonet and the brain and those triggers that you need, I would write down, tell this story here. So you could write down certain questions that you think are going to come from this interview. So it could be your standard questions. It could also be questions based off of that job description. And you could say, tell the story of when I was, I would put like, tell my waitress story. There was a waitress story that I used to always share. And so I would write that note so I could share that with the students that I was teaching. And I would also do that in interviews as well, is write those little notes. It is okay for you to have your resume in front of you and for you to have some notes off to the side. Again, you can't put your head down and bury yourself and read, but you can have those notes, whether you're doing an in-person interview or you're doing a virtual interview. And I will say this as a caveat, even when we're doing presentations, we have trigger notes. So again, if you think about your presentations, you'll have notes so that you make sure that you're covering everything. So keep that in mind. It's the same as doing an interview.
Excellent. Thank you. And then I think do you have any quick tips for the perspective of the interviewer?
Can that person clarify what they're asking?
Leave you. I think, Daniel, if you want to just clarify, I think maybe we said earlier, just my interpretation of it, kind of think about it from the perspective of the interviewer and what maybe their intentions were in asking the question. But I'm not sure, so we can leave that open for maybe Daniel to clarify. We did have another question too. If it is my intention to use the job as a stepping stone, can or should I state that?
Don't state that unless it's a super entry level job and they know that, right? So, for example, there are jobs out there that are like, this particular type of assistant, and everyone knows that that is where they draw from for the next role, then it's okay. Otherwise, do not say that. You need to show interest in this role, not in a potential future something that may or may not exist.
Absolutely. And I would say ditto to that. You don't want to share that. Again, it's still an opportunity and you never know how long you're going to be there or in that role. And then too, it could be a stepping stone within that organization where it leads you somewhere else because they see how qualified and how well you're doing in that actual role. So just keep in mind that, but I would not say that in the interview. Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you. And then I think Daniel clarified just maybe some quick tips for interviewing someone else. He said, I know this seminar is covering being interviewed. He said, no worries if not. Like we could, if we had some quick tips, or we could even follow up with those as well directly if there, because it's kind of a different, topic in terms of interviewing somebody else.
I'm going to pause and say I have a lot. I have a lot of thoughts because, again, I prep people to interview folks. Daniel, if you want to find me on LinkedIn and reach out, we can even just have a conversation and I can tell you all the things I think. But I just had a conversation with a client last week and they sent me their interview questions and it's for a very, very high level role. And I just flatly told them these are not appropriate questions to be asking someone at this level. What are you trying to accomplish? And so I think when you are the person doing the interviewing, flip it on its head. Start with what are you trying to accomplish, and then figure out the questions that you need to ask to get there that will get you there with your pool of candidates. So it will depend on who you're interviewing. And I'll pause there for sake of this call, but I'm happy to talk more.
And I'll post it with the follow-up with the slides to your contact, Lynda, and as well, obviously, yours, Yvonne, with Career Services and Stacey. So anybody can follow up with questions directly too.
Thank you, everyone. It's
Yes.
1 o'clock. We use our time very efficiently. We are glad that we heard some wonderful advice on interviews. And next, we will provide a couple more webinars on other topics. And please watch out your emails or text messages or your instructors posting. And we want to see you again. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.